Let's start. So for introduce, like I am how can I say this? A graduate or student from a university. I have just like complete my fuck complete my thesis just a week before. So now I'm like learning about Java from zero to find my job. And it times because the like uh, I'm search on the website, LinkedIn, everywhere, and find that Java is the most language that people need. So just learn it. So I find there are two sources that might be good. The first one is a YouTube, just uh, like think about Java, like Java tutorial in it, from to Let's Go. It got a lot of views. I think it's good maybe. And the second source is from official from Oracle. It's the Java SE 11 programming course complete. So it seems that they give this course fees to let people learn and like take their certificates, and this certificates like take a lot of money. So just give a course fees and for people to learn and earn that certificate with money. So it's just give and earn. So start with the first lesson, the first one. So just run it. Damn, I forgot to like create an account, bro. Sorry, I think I have to like create my account first. To set up this. Sorry, you guys, I have to wait for a minute. Create account. Damn. Create account. Continue. Yeah, sorry you guys for waiting. So it's really new account and log in it. So let's continue. Download it. Wait, what? I have to buy this one? How much they take? Wait, what? It's free for learning? Wait, what? Oh, okay. So, damn. Just learn by.
So let's solve this problem. So we are not able to run this code, right?
Look at this. Oh, no problem. So I like here says I have a book about this one. Uh, yeah, the books about this course. Uh, this belong to the like the OCP Java's 11 course. So just download ebooks from the internet. Uh, so I think in parallel with learning from this YouTube channels, I will like double check it with the book. So about chapters first one, I have watched this a little bit, so just I'll remind about it. So they will say about the Java's, what is it? Main component is the JDK, which include the the compiler, which converts uh, .java file to a class file, and a launcher named Java, which create a virtual machine and execute this file on it. So it's allow the Java to run like on machines, because the Java files they run on a JVM here. The Java PyCode file they run on the JVM. It's magic box that like know how to run the class file in on machine that install JDK. And here they talk about the TRE, just a subset of my Java to like run without combine. I think yes, running a program but couldn't combine one. For download JDK, I have downloaded my notes. Notion. Just because I'm using in the Ubuntu, so I remember exactly. Just follows example from the internet. It allows to download the JDK, the dev file here, install it. So So to make sure about you have installed, so I just check the first the Java version. I have it. Uh, the version 17, and here's the Java launchers. If I remember exactly, the thing does run the PyCode. The thing does create the JVM, the launchers, and Java C, the Java compiler, which combine the .java file to a PyCode. So I have both of them. So just start to run a program. So
Right, this is not working. We want to get hello world on the screen. It was working with JShell because JShell says you just pass a statement, I will work. But then when you build an application, when you run the application, how exactly it
I speed up it because it's a little bit too slow for me.
works behind the scene. Once we understand that, we can write this code. So in your machine, you will be having something called JVM. Now, by default, when you say Java is platform independent, is because of JVM, because in your machine, you will be having JVM. Irrespective of which OS you use, it can be Windows, Linux-based OS, or Mac, or whatever famous OS we have, it will have JVM installed. And of course, if you have JVM, you can
Yes, as the book say, the official book from the Oracle who like just invent the Java. So because the cost is run on JVM, so any OS that able to install JVM, so Java is able to
run Java application. And if you don't have JVM, you can't run Java application. Okay, so we got JVM here, right? Now what JVM says, hey, I will work. But then there's one question. When you say JVM will work, but JVM works on which environment? So underlying, we have your OS. So this is your OS is, and then your OS is working on a hardware, right? So you'll be having a hardware. It can be a laptop, it can be a desktop, it can be a phone, doesn't matter. You have a hardware. On top of that, we have an OS. On top of that, we have something called JVM. Now JVM says, okay, my job is to execute a Java code. Okay, so whatever Java code you create, JVM will execute that. But then JVM will not accept the code directly. See, what happens is Java goes in multiple steps in Java application. When you as a programmer, so let's say you are a programmer here, and when you write a code, you will not directly write a code which will run on JVM, okay? And we don't even do that, right? We don't even write a code which directly works on the hardware. And we don't even write a code which works directly on OS. Java says if you want to make it work, you have to run your code on JVM, but then JVM will not understand what you're talking about. And one more thing we have talked about, right? Java is platform independent. So what does platform independence means? It simply means that you can run your application on any machine. Okay, so when you write a Java code, it will run on any machine irrespective of the hardware or the OS. But the only thing it requires is that machine need to have JVM. So irrespective of which platform I'm talking about, if it has JVM, your application becomes platform independent. But JVM itself is platform dependent. Okay, so example, you can't run JVM on iOS. So we can't say Java is platform independent when JVM itself is dependent. So yes, your application is independent, JVM is not. So JVM need to be built for a particular OS. And let's say if it is Windows, in my machine it is Mac, but let's say if it is Windows, we have JVM available on Windows. So your JVM says,
so a node at this step. I have to have like a node. About JVM. Where is independent? JVM enough. On OS. Java because it can run OS.
hey, I will run your code, but you have to submit me not the Java code, but something called a bytecode. So you have to convert your code into an unreadable format for a normal human being, and this is called a bytecode. Because JVM only understands bytecode. But can you write bytecode? Of course not. You only understands English type of languages, right? So whatever we have written the code, we have written read. So basically you have to convert this into a Java, right? So that means when you write something,
So at the book say, we
it will go into bytecode and then byte. So JVM says you need to tell me what that file is. Okay, so if you, even if you have 1,000 files which you want to run in your project, you have to give the first file. So in this case, what you will do is you will specify, hey, that's my first file. So when you run the code, you will specify the first file, and also that file need to have something called a main method. Okay, so as I mentioned before, right, we have print. In the same way we have main. So your file, the first file, need to have a main method. So when I say first file, it's not like you have to follow a sequence, create this file, then that file. Out of all the files in your project, the execution will start from the first file which you specify. Okay, and that file need to have main, not just main. It is looking for a specific.
So I think it's somehow similar to C++ when I like remember I have a lot of files and need to combine it at uh, at once and specify the order of them and create the main function in the first file. I remember exactly a or just a oh, I forgot it. Just oh I forgot. Sorry. Let's continue.
Specific signature. Okay, so when I say signature, it means the entire method signature, the method name, what are the values you are passing, and all those stuff. And of course, all this term you will get used to in some of these sessions. Don't worry. So first, you have to make sure that you provide a main, and main has a particular signature. Again, what each word means that we'll see later. So the signature is this. It is public static void main. So you have to remember, always pass this method. I know there are 4 words, but then this is.
So wait. So to run code on multiple Java file, we must specify the first file list, and the first file must have the main function, which include public static void main blah blah blah.
This is the thing you have to remember. And main will accept some arguments, some parameters. So you have to pass string A. Now again, we'll discuss this, what this string is, what is public, static, void. We'll discuss that in some time. But main is looking for the signature. So your code will not work without this signature. Okay, so remember this. So that makes sense. So what are the steps you have to follow? So the first step is, as a programmer, you will be creating a Java file. Okay. Now once your Java file is ready, you will put that into compiler. Then compiler will compile it. Then that code becomes a byte file, a byte code basically. Then you will take this byte code, you will run that on JVM. Now once your JVM says, okay, I'm running the code, JVM will look for this particular syntax. It should be there in your code. And then you will get the output, right? Simple stuff. Okay, now there's a space in between here. If you can see, this is a space. I have left that space intentionally because we'll add certain things there. So at this point, just remember, there's a space here. There's a box remaining here. We'll add that box in some time. Now, once we have understood all those things, it's time to expand this code. Now, if you remember, we have to write everything in a main, right? So this section should be a part of, remember what JVM will ask you for? JVM will ask you for main. So we have to put that into main. So what is the syntax for main? It's very simple. It's public static void main. We have seen that. Of course, this words, we'll define that words in the upcoming session. And once you understand all these terms, you are Java programmer, right? And in this, we'll say string A, and that's it. This is the syntax you have to follow. Now, there's one more thing. In Java, now Java is object-oriented. Now, what is object-oriented means, we'll discuss that later. But in simple terms, object-oriented means everything should be an object. And to create object, we need a class. Okay. Again, we'll discuss all those things in the upcoming session, but a class is.
So he had a note about the OOP. Everything must belong to a class, must be a class. So at the previous video, he had test just using the function without the prefix, some prefix here, and it does work. And he just like adding system out before this green light, so it works. Probably this is the object, some like review objects of the Java guess.
is missing here.
And
In fact, if
wait, what? And this function must be belong to a class, right?
you compile this code, this is what your Java say will tell you. Java say says, hey, where is your class? Your class is missing.
Yes, 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 yes. As I guess, it's in class. It record. What is this one?
Okay, let's do that. So let's put that a class here and we'll give a class name. At this point, we'll keep the class name and file name same and we'll say open bracket and close and we'll give an indentation. So basically we have to follow this thing. Always give a tab. So every time you open a curly bracket, give a tab. It looks good. Okay, there's no compulsion. It looks good. And we love to build stuff which also runs and looks good. Okay, this looks good, right? Ignore this X and these suggestions. These are the extra suggestions coming from your VS Code, but ignore that part. In fact, is it because happening of this extension? Let me just remove this. So let's not use that extension because it will give you suggestion. It's good for development, but not for teaching purpose. So it adds extra text there. Okay, cool. So this is how you write your code. Okay, we got a class, a file name, and then public static void main. In bracket, you have to mention.
I think I have to practice this one on also to create a hello Java file. Anything in Java belong to a class, so we need to create a class. Hello. Need to have a main function. Let's start with topic static void main and take the argument string. I don't know what is this one, but just follow me. And system like I do not use the extension for recommending code, but just like a beginner, know nothing and learn it from scratch. A word. I need to combine this one using the compiler. Let's see, JavaC. Hello. Oh damn! I need to see this. Oh, I forgot the semicolon because I'm have learned about Golang before, so I just forget this one, the semicolon. Oh, so it's combined this file to create a file code. Can I read it? This is the file code. The string Java. System something blah blah blah. The source they have about the source file. Yeah, the code in the source file. Actually, cannot read it. How can I run it? Continue.
Mention the parameters. Again, we'll discuss that later. And the only thing, important statement here is system.out.print. Hello.
If I remember exactly in just a guess using the link here during the class file. Probably not the right
The world. Okay, now let's see if this works. Let's clear the screen and compile. You can see there's no error. But the moment I compiled, if you can see on the left hand side, we got this extra file. We got hello.class. Now this is your bytecode. Remember, we have talked about a bytecode here. This is a file which got created automatically. So when you create a Java file, when you send it for the compilation, it will create the bytecode. And the extension for the bytecode is .class file. The extension for Java code.
So what is ClickUp? ClickUp is an all-in-one productivity software where you can manage everything and anything.
Is .java file. And now JVM, and for that you have to use a command which is Java, and you have to mention the class name, not a file name this time, just a class name. The class name is hello and say enter. You can see we got hello world. So yeah, that's how it works. So simple stuff. That's how we can able to complete our code, and we are able to run this code. Now if you have done till now, give a round of applause or a pat on your back.
Why Java the class name is hello? Oh, they know it. if I change goodbye? That's fine. Plus, so I recombine the file. So the class. Oh, that's goodbye. Okay, it's with the file again. What mentioned about the class in here? Probably the goodbye. Probably. Just get.
because you deserve it. Okay, so this makes sense, right? So there's a gap here, right? So let's remove this gap. So what we have here, so basically, when you run your code, basically think about you're cooking something in a kitchen, right? So where do we cook? Of course, in a kitchen, right? Why not in a hall or in a bedroom? It's because in the kitchen, to cook something, you need extra things, right? Example, if you make a biryani, I don't know if you know the recipe, even I don't know the recipe, but if you make a biryani, you have to add extra ingredients, right? Now those things are kept in the shelf. So in the kitchen, you will not just have that resources which are there in the platform, but also you'll be having extra stuff. Now the same way, if you want to run your Java application, you need extra libraries. And you also need a runtime. Now runtime is something where you can run things, right? Now you can run something in a JVM, so that is part of run. But then what if you need some extra libraries? You need an environment as well. So Java provides you one more thing. So we have one more layer here, which is above your OS, which is called JRE. So when you want to run something, you use JRE to run it. Now JRE stands for Java Runtime Environment. And what is your JVM? JVM stands for Java Virtual Machine. Okay. So basically we have two things. We have a JVM and we have a JRE. Now JVM is a part of JRE. Now what else you will be having inside your JVM? You will be having some libraries. So JVM with libraries is a part of JRE. So whenever you run something, it runs inside the JRE, and JVM is actually responsible to run it. Okay, and by default, when you want to run your application on any platform, it need to have JRE, which will have JVM. Now, not every machine will have Java C. Java C is only for development purpose, right? So we can imagine this in this section. So basically, we have an outer box, which is your JDK, which is used by developers, inside which you will be having something called JRE, and in this, you'll be having JVM. So as a developer, you'll be installing JDK, JDK will have JRE, JRE will have JVM. But to run something on any other machine, let's say if you have made the application, you want to run this on your friend's machine will only have JRE and JVM. JDK is not required. And that's why we say Java is Vora, which is write once and run anywhere. Right, so you just have to write on your machine, you can run it on any other machine, provided you have JRE and JVM installed. So that's how your Java works behind the scene. I hope it makes sense now, and we'll write some more code in the upcoming video.
So a note about this one. In JVM plus library we call JRE and JDK and JRE plus probably Java C we call JDK. And it's right here because the so to get we need Java C to combine code. But to run we only need JVM and lib is equal to JRE. Java C and JVM or JDK.
It's time to master Java, Spring, and microservices and become an enterprise developer. And that's where we are coming up with a course which is called Enterprise Java Spring Microservices Live Course. I know that's a big name, but yeah, we have big topics, so big name makes sense. Now, this is a live course which will go for 6 months, and it's a weekday batch starting from Monday to Friday, and this will be happening string interfaces, and list goes on. We are going to end the core Java part at file handling. Then we'll focus on Spring Core, Spring Data JPA, Spring Web MVC, then REST and Spring Security, and then we'll focus on microservices. So this will be an amazing course. I hope.
Universe Kogaku designs and manufactures precision-assembled optics, including UV quartz lenses, CCD, and
Okay, so we were able to run this code and we understood something, what is happening behind the scene, right? So basically we know now that as a programmer, as a Java developer,
So start with the next chapters about the variables.
you write our Java code, which will be having .java extension, and that gets compiled by Java C. And then when you compile the code, what you get in the output is a bytecode, which will be having .class file. And then you can run the .class file in your JDK, which is JDK. Now, when you install a new JDK, you get the updated JRE and JVM with it. Okay, so the version of JDK which we are using is JDK 17, which is LTS, which is long-term support. And in every new version, you get some minor extra features, right? So even if you are watching this after 10 years or 8 years or 5 years, you will be having new version of Java. Of course, next 5 years, you will get 10 new versions, and every new version will have minor updates. But the base thing remains same, right? So whatever you're learning is actually from Java 1 itself. The system.out.println is same, with the help of virtual world. Example, you wanted to buy something, so you got Amazon, which delivers everything at home. So you got Amazon as online service. You wanted to book a cab, you got Uber. So for every problem, we have a solution in the virtual world, right? So banking, everything is happening online. Now, when you say you are replacing the real world with a virtual world solution, so basically we need to work with one thing. The most important thing now is actually data. So basically we want to work with data. So how will you work with data? So basically, you need data as well as processing on it. So whenever we build a project or when you build an application, what we are doing is we are doing the processing on data. Now this data can be coming from user or something. So maybe you will accept the data from the user and then you will do some work with it. Maybe you want to store this data. Now, where exactly do we store data? So we store data in something called database. So we have a database here in which you will be storing your data. So whatever data you're getting from the user or from after processing. So let's say we got a user here, user sends us data, we will apply a processing on that. So we will do some work in between. And then at the end, we might store data in database. Now this database is actually a permanent storage or a persistent storage, which you say. Now, when you say it is permanent, that doesn't mean you can't change it. Of course you can replace the values as well, but then the data stays there. Okay, so if you just store it, and even if you shut down your machine, the data will be stored. Example, when you copy movies or games on your laptop, it stays there, right? It will get deleted when you say delete, but it will store your data. Now, what data you want to store? Your data can be numeric, it can be text, it can be that somewhere is variable. So this is permanent storage, but you will be doing some processing on that where you will store the data for temporary purpose. Of course, database is there for permanent storage, but during processing, you have to store your data somewhere, and that somewhere is variable. So this is where you store your data. Now, what is variable? So imagine variable as a box, and in this box, you will store your data. Now, what data you want to store? Your data can be numeric, it can be text, it can be image, whatever you want to store. So you can store that data in this variable. Now, I'm not talking specific to Java. In general, when you say you want to store data, you will store that in a box, and that box will have a type to it. It can be of type numbers, it can be of type text or image or video. So here we are trying to store data, right? So let's say I want to store a number which is 5. So this box will have a number 5 and it will also have a name to it. Maybe I can give a name, let's say a number. Doesn't matter what name you give. Of course, there are some restrictions on names, but num works. You can use any name which you like. Maybe you can create one more box here and you want to store the number itself, but let's say a decimal. Basically what you do is you create a box, and inside the box will be having values. Now this box are actually called variables. So we can name this box as a variable. You'll be having a value. So name and value will be there. Apart from that, Java is actually called strongly typed language. Now, what it means is whatever variable you want to create. So if you want to store the data, of course, Java says, hey, we'll accept the data. But tell me also what kind of box you want. A different type of data will require different box. Okay, which will accept. This is a text, right? What about this box? Of course, we say this is a number. This is also format, but we cannot int. Why not natural numbers or whole numbers? Is because maybe you want to store negative values as well. So remember your maths concept. So we have negative numbers to positive values. So everything will be considered as int. So we can store -5, +5. That's your choice. maybe 2 plus 2 or 5 plus 6, simple stuff, right? But before that,
So I summarize about this because I have learned in computer science, particulars, blah blah blah. So I know these things while learning C++. And for as he says, because we are programmers or developers, who like solve the real world problem and real world problems and to work with data and to permanent store, we use the database, and to store some temporary we use variable just for processing it's inside program, because we don't need to store like every step into the database, like the hard disk, the SSD. We just need to store the final, like that. So we just need to store these temporary variables on, for example, the RAM, and there are type of variable like this. What type? We call this data type, and this thing is like we call it primitive data type. The like the default data type of the language.
okay, so we can store data in the integer format, but we cannot store 6.5 in it because 6.5 2 plus 2 or 5 plus 6, simple stuff, right? But before that, we'll see how do we store data. Even first, so the first step is compilation and then running, and you can see we got the output, which is 8. Just ignore this percentage symbol as of now. Actually, there's one more thing I wanted to mention. Whenever you print something, let's say I want to print this number here as well. I want to perform different operations, so you can write multiple statements for different operation you want to perform. So you can say 8 plus 7. So we are doing addition here and then addition here. Let's clear the screen. Okay, first compile. Okay, that's what. Compile, run, and you can see we got the value. Now the only thing you can see is the result are bit they're together, right? We want to give a space of maybe I can print 15 on new line. So what you can do is instead of using print, you can actually use something called print ln. Now print ln means print new line. So it will print and it will go here. So I don't want to perform the operation here. Remove that. I want to store that value first. So how do we store it? Of course, we need box, right? So I can say num1. I can, as I mentioned, I can use any variable name. So let's say num1, or to start with, let's say num, just to keep it simple. And then we can give a value to it. Let's say value is 3. So remember, we have to mention the variable name, and then we have to mention the value for it. And at the end, of course, you can put a semicolon. So we can say we got num equal to 3, and we got a semicolon. So in Java, after every statement, you have to give a semicolon. You might be thinking, hey, why don't we have a semicolon here? It's because that is a block. So we don't put a semicolon out at the end of a block. The reason is it signifies that's the end. Here, if we don't mention semicolon, how do we define that that's the end? So it's good to put semicolon at the end. And anyway, Java will give you error if you don't do that. The next thing we have to do here is we have to also mention the type. What type of num is this? So we can say int. Now you have to say first you have to specify the type, and then you mention the variable name. Maybe if you have learned some other languages where you put the type afterwards, in Java we first put the value or put the type, and then we put the name, then we assign the value. Now this equal to here is called assignment operator because you are assigning a value. So what it will do is it will take the value from the right hand side, it will assign the value to the left hand side. Okay, remember this. Equal to will take the value from the right hand side, it will assign the value to the left hand side. Okay, so we got a variable which is of type int. Okay, so this is num, which is a variable, and then we can print it now. Let's only print the value, that's it, nothing much. I will just save. Now once you click on save, you have to compile the code and run the code, and you can see variable from num to num is equal to. So every time you want to get a variable, just mention the type, which is int, of whatever type of variable you're creating. At this point, we are working with numbers, so we'll say int num2 equal to. We can assign the value, which is 5. So we got 3 and 5. Here, what you can do is you can actually perform the operation here itself. So you can say num1 plus num2. That works. Saying num1, compile, run, and you can see we got 8. You know what? At here, and instead of print is num1, you have to also mention the type of create a variable.
So it's really like specific things in the word. One, before, first, and so something like that. If I just like multiply it, combine it, capacity, and then I think it's because it's just like wait what out it's the out of the byte, so out of the memory of the int, so in by int, the result will return a int, and it's the out of the memory of the equal, and it is like 2 to the power of 32 equal like 8 million, 4 million, 4 million, I think. So this very much larger if I change it to this 1 million equal. Yeah, so it still work. Yes. But larger than 5 million it's not work anymore. For sure. Oh wait, what? It's still go. Oh, so 5 here is much more than this. Oh, still works. So it's so the pi here is the in here is 2 to the power 64. So it's also is much larger than this. Oh, dang. So I'm doing wrong. I'm doing wrong. I'm doing wrong. Now it's wrong. I want to check it. It's good. Sitting there. Oh, it's the mark in is it 2 billion? Not 2 to the power 3. 4 billion, 4 billion. Oh, I forgot 4 billion, 4 billion, 4 billion. Oh, I'm so bad at math. Billion, billion, billion. Oh, is it like 4 billion? That's right. So 3 billion. What? Give me. Is it 2 billion? Oh, because it has to place already a negative number, so it's just 2 billion.
Table, which will be having a name. So now we know what variables are and how do we create them. So basically in the last video we have talked about how to create a variable with the help of the data type and the value as well. Now what are the other options we have? So we have work with characters, we work with true or false. Now for that we have this category. So we can divide primitive into 4 categories here. The first one and the other one will be data type which we can normally work with. One is called data type. In fact, there are 2 categories of data type which we can normally work with. One is called primitive and the other one will keep it question mark. Okay, at this point we are not discussing about the second one. The first one is primitive. So basically in Java we have a lot of inbuilt data types available which you can use, and they are primitive. Now primitive simply means it is simple, basic to use, to work with. So whatever data you normally have, normally we work with numbers, we work with point values, we work with characters, value. So that goes into integer. Whenever you have point values, that goes into float value. Whenever you go with characters like A, B or any, we have another option which is of double, and then of course we have float, and then char is characters is true and false. Okay. So example, if I go back to my code and if I want to create a different variable, this time let's say float. In characters, we can have different type of characters. In Boolean, the only values we can have is true and false. Okay. So example, if I go back to my code and if I want to create a different variable, this time let's say float. So I can just come back here. I can remove the integers itself. So what if you want to store a smaller number? So of course, int provides you the range, but then what if you want to save memory? You don't want to go for int range. In that case, we can have a short value. Now short is only 2.
We could store the integers. So the limited of the numbers that you want to store. You have to choose the right type. And let's say in for 4 bytes. 4 bytes, so it's equal to, because 4 bytes and 1 byte is 8 bits, so 8 bits, so equal to 33 bits, and then 1 bit is 1 or 0. So in overall we have like 2 to the power 33 cases that will create from the 0 1 or the something 0 0 1 0 like this is creating a combination like this. So we have like 2 to the power of 33 combination of 0 and 1s. So it's combination. Combination is a number. So we have 4 billion numbers. So divided in half, we have 2 billion numbers for the positive and 2 yes 2 billion for the 2 billion for the positive and 2 billion for the negative.
2 bytes. So if you want to have a limited range, you can 8 or any other value which you want. Of course, that should be in a range, and that's how you can store it. Now, what if you try that with float? It may not work. Example, if you say float, and if you say a variable name which is num and equal to, so when you try to assign 5.6, it will.
So in float, this will come in. They have to store the like the float part. The 3 4 5 6. So they have to divide the, instead of just 3 bits, they divide a bit to like half a bit, store the first for the integer number, and half of it then like 60 bits to store the 4 5 6 here, the floating point up changes. So it's this depend on the language in the OS, I think.
It will give you error. It's because by default. It's because it normally occupies the integer range. It normally occupies the character range, ASCII values. But then in Java, we thought, hey, can we just have all the characters in the world, not just English, all the languages? So Java actually follows something called Unicode, not ASCII by default. It will support Unicode, and it has 2 bytes, which is 16 bits. So it has a bigger range, right? So this is a range it normally works with. So of course, you can work with any type of values you have, and any type of characters basically you have. And if you want to define a character variable, it's very simple. You say char, and then you specify the variable name, let's say character or c equal to whatever character you want to assign. Let's say I want to assign a character which is k. Now in this case, if you want to work with a character, can we use double quotes? Now double quotes is for string, right? For character, we have to use single quote, and you have to put your character to single quote. And remember, it will only accept a single character. And next we have of type Boolean. So if you want to work with
Characters, we really got 2 byte comparison. I think this one needs to not.
It's because of this true or false. Okay, and how you can see it will give you, if I do that,
What's the byte thing?
which is 129 single quote or double quote, because they are itself keywords. So these are the options we have. Now, if you want to see this in a code, it's very simple. You can just go back here and say, okay, byte is done. Let's create some variables with different type. So int we have already seen, so it's a num1. This is how you assign integer value. But if you want to go with a 5, something like this. So float marks equal to 6.5. That makes sense, right? Okay, cool. In the same way, we have also mentioned we have subtypes to integer. We can have a byte format. But why do we need all these extra formats? For that, let's understand some basic concept. Now, basically, when we talk about integers itself, so if we talk about integer, we have some sections to it. So integer will have different parts. Int and byte. So we also have, and of course, if a value goes beyond. So if you want to have a limited range, you can find the range on the string. Okay, so 8 bits, and whatever you want to store.
Byte, it's just one byte. Okay. Got it.
It says again possible lossy conversion from double to.
Wait, how long we need to add the L? Really? Okay, we have to what? 23. Can I just combine it? No. Okay. Oh, the semicolon. Incompatible time. Let's see conversion in triple. Yeah. What? Wait. Why?
To float, because by default 5.8 is double. If you want to mention hey that's not double, that's float, you can put a f at the end. That should work. You can work double as well. Double d is equal to 5.8, same value, but this time it is double. And then what else we can work?
For example, the list with the plot with the F and long with the L. Nice. Oh, long with the L, so with what is the F and L?
Work with.
Probably they convert the
We can work with character as well. So we can say char c is equal to, in single quote you can mention when you work with multiple languages at the same time you get confused somewhere. So that's boolean, not bull. So in the notes as well I need to change it. So I will say this. We can't even put double quotes there, it will give you error as well. And you can see you can't even put double quotes. So you have to put single quote because that's what character represents. And the character can be numbered as well. So you can put a character here which is 8, which is a character itself.
Hello. Communicate in English easily. Use Grammarly and
Okay, so when you talk about data types and then values,
I think I have to speed up this. This like very easy. So for the next screen, I think I have like go to this one and just have a summary for you guys, which is really basic for programming. And jump into some like have like rewatch the creative file. You guys. Specific video to like rewatch and then yes. Thanks for watching this one.